Hello everyone, I am today talking about Drakengard 3 on the PS3. Yeah, wow. There's a lot to say about this game. It's definitely the ones that really stand in the middle for me, where it does a lot of things really well and a lot of things really, really badly. I think, for example, what people rag on this game the most for is the fact, like, the frame rate is abysmal. It is absolutely terrible. It can reach like 15 frames per second at some point. It is just made terribly. And this really was the last game. I mean, even after Drakengard 2, you can't really even use your dragon in this game. You can, but you can no longer summon it on the field. It only works in like set segmented areas, and you can tell that the entire like game engine is different in how they designed the dragon sections. So I feel like this has been rebuilt from the ground up, and it's very much built around more as a muso, more as just mowing down enemies. And that's a real emphasis. And there are very few dragon missions in this game, but really we're not here for the gameplay, we're here for the insane story. And in this case, the story is insane, but in a different way than Drakengard 1. And so, of course, people think, oh, it's a prequel, I can jump in and know what's going on. And really, you do really need to play the original Drakengards, or at least Drakengard 1, to really understand the context of what is going on and why people are acting the way they are. I have to say, though, I love the designs of Zero and her sisters. I love their personalities and their sort of minions and their different aesthetics. Again, this game has very strong characters, and it's kind of a shame we just don't actually get more of them. I feel there's a large gameplay to character, and story ratio that really could have been solved or fixed. Another big issue is that the premise starts out Zero needs to kill her sisters, or wants to kill her sisters, and the reason for that is not revealed until like the third or fourth ending, why she actually has to do this. And I don't know, it just was such a, oh, okay, I wish I knew that, like, maybe beforehand, why she's a huge asshole, like why she wants to kill her sisters. Like, it would just really help. And it is like a legitimately interesting, good reason, but you just are not filled in until the very end, and by that point, everything has already kind of transpired. This was, I believe, the last game that Cavia made before they shut down. Before this was Nier, and so because I fell in love with Nier around 2010, I jumped into this game around 2013 when it came out. I thought, oh, this is the same game, or by the same guy, and I want to get into the series, and I thought I'd get into this. And while this is like I guess I don't know, a fair game by Drakengard standards, I actually don't think this is a great starting point, because you really need to know what happened in the events of Drakengard 1 to really begin to understand what is even going on and how everything is connected. Because, again, the lore in these games is absolutely insane. And also there's a lot of references to old things from Drakengard 1. For example, you start off in the Cathedral City where Sister 1 is staying, and all of these other characters kind of confront you, and you have this big battle. Again, the characters are the big part of this game, and my issue is that some of them are very, likable because of their very sadistic, evil nature. And, this is what Taro kind of does with all of his other characters. He makes them really awful, terrible people. But as you spend time with them and you get to know them and their mannerisms, you actually ended up, warming up to them and liking them a lot more. And so the basic premise is, as Zero takes out each sister, she will have like some kind of manservant that has a different, honestly, fetish. One is a sadist, one is a masochist. One is like just a pervy old man. Another one is actually a normal kind of like boyfriend material. And so as Zero kills each of her sisters, she also steals their boyfriends. The whole thing is honestly just really kind of insane, but I love it. What's also very interesting is each sister has a different color associated with her, as well as a different item that you use in the game. And of course, by the end of the game, once you defeat each sister, you get their specific weapon and item to use in battle. And similar to the Drakengard style, each weapon also has a story. So as you level up, you also get a different part of that story, which becomes a whole kind of context for that character as well. There's also the main relationship between Zero and Mikhail, who is her pet dragon, who used to be Michael, which was a massive dragon that she would use to basically fight, and something happened to him and he perished or used up all his enemy, and now he's a baby dragon again, and she has to train him. I see a lot of similarities between Kaine and Emil kind of relationship going on here, but Zero is just generally just a bastard and very mean. She is just completely unlikable when I first played as her. And only as I got used to her, I started to really warm up to her, because when you realize what her motivations are and why she is so hardened the way she is, it actually makes a lot of sense. Also, there's a huge lore component about why there is a flower pinned into her eye socket. And again, once you understand everything, you're like, oh, not only is that aesthetically really interesting and congruent, but it actually makes a great sense in terms of the lore. And it's just frustrating that it took me like 40 hours to get to that point to really appreciate her character. Another good observation that someone else made is that Zero has a very different personality depending if you're doing her English or Japanese voice. And so I did play a little bit in Japanese. I pretty much play everything in English unless it's really, really bad. And her Japanese voice is a lot more kind of how would I say, toned down, or more kind of matter of fact, more kind of apathetic, rather than like, oh, I have to kill you. This is just what I have to do. I don't have any joy in my life. While this Zero is just more of just an asshole. Like, I'm going to enjoy killing you and watching you suffer and die and all this other stuff and all this crazy stuff. So the other thing, too, is that Zero and her sisters are something called intoners. And so they have the power of song. And so it's really interesting that essentially when, Zero is covered in blood, that powers her, and she basically starts singing in order to activate her power mode, or her devil trigger, or her intoner mode in battle, in which case she can basically tear up the enemies and just completely take all of them out and be done with them. And so what's interesting is each one of these 5 sisters rules a different respective area of the land that Drakengard 1 featured, from the mountains, the snow area, the desert, the forest, etc. And they've basically put all of these different empires under their spell via their singing. And for those of you who have played Drakengard 1, you're already putting together the dots as to exactly, they all have red eyes when they are under this spell. And suddenly a lot of things start to click together, and people start to realize exactly what is going on. Again, this is a very weird game because the gameplay itself, like I said, is pretty much rubbish. I would say it's arguably almost worse than Drakengard 1. The only thing that is saving it is, sometimes the music, but it is really bad. But what really saves it for me is the story and the characters, because it is just so damn interesting. I cannot help but get divulged or invested in it. And I've been in this game, I put a lot of hours into this game that I think it's a little bit egregious, honestly. And I've actually replayed it twice to get the full context after I beat Drakengard 1, because I felt like I missed a lot. And when you play Drakengard 1 and you have the context for how the magic system operates, for how there's different motivations of these different factions, of the implications of certain, characters or things or lore, and when you finally see them represented in Drakengard 3, it begins to make a lot of sense. Even though this technically is a prequel, it really relies on all the knowledge of the previous games. Not really Drakengard 2, though. You can throw that in the trash. Zero basically has a light attack, heavy attack. It's a little bit more fluid than Drakengard 1, but again, the frame rate is just comically abysmal, I would say. I've never played a game with such slow frame rates where things just aren't always exploding. It's just very odd and it's very janky. But again, it's that I don't know. It's that feeling of this weird esoteric game that's trying to give you this strange, interesting, beautiful message, but it just sucks in how it's performing on a technical level. One thing I need to bring up, though, that is really different from the original Drakengard that I really don't like about this one is that this game has a lot of humor. And when I say humor, I mean bad, stupid, not good humor. Like in this opening scene here, Mikhail, basically Zero chews him out for basically leaving her behind. And basically in fear, Mikhail pisses himself, and that's supposed to be this like funny haha scene. I don't know what to say. And there's a lot of things like that, like Accord, she's a fun character, but when she shows up, it's usually comic relief, and comic relief is just something that is just does not belong in the Drakengard series. So even though Taro got the series back after Ubisoft kind of burned it a little bit, he really took it in his own direction where he added a bunch of stuff that just really undercuts the tension, honestly, in a lot of places. And it's not really visible in the first run, but in the subsequent runs. So it's interesting how this game is divided up, because it does basically make you replay it 4 different times, but each run is essentially a different level entirely. You are not going to replay a lot of the same stuff. You might be in the same environments, the same areas, but the motivations and everything else is going to be very different. And it really does treat it essentially like different timelines, which become canon in this game, where essentially, yes, everything is actually in a different timeline, and there actually is a element or a character recording and supervising everything. So, for example, in ending A, it ends with Zero killing all of her sisters and, ending in a kind of draw where essentially it's revealed. Oh my god. It's revealed exactly, the identity of Sister 1, and it seems like the ending, the implications that ending A is what leads to the events of Drakengard 1, and it's so fascinating to see how it develops and how interesting it comes to that point. And yeah, the whole relationship of Sister 1 and her true identity and how she lays the foundation for the upcoming events of Drakengard 1 are just so absolutely fascinating. The other thing that's also very cool too is that I believe there is even a Drakengard manga that bridges the gap between ending A of Drakengard 3 and Drakengard 1, which are very interesting and goes into, again, the lore and how really the magic system and how it works and develops and is how it is designed. And how it develops. It's honestly so fascinating. Oh my god, I cannot get over it. Additionally, I want to say just about this opening scene, it's very interesting that it's never explained, it's never brought up again, it's not a big thing, but as Zero is walking through the tutorial level basically and having dialogue with Mikhail and like learning the basic mechanics, there is this poem which is given in separate stanzas, which is just displayed on screen, and it's not voiced at all, it's just there. And I don't know, I just love this poem, and it's just never really referenced again. And it's weird to just have an opening to a game and they just have a poem on screen and it's just not explained. In fact, there's dialogue over it, they're not really ignoring it or acknowledging it in any way, it's just there. I think this is one of the coolest things where you just have this text on screen, which is setting like the tone for what you're doing. I just think it's really cool, and I'd love to see more of it, frankly. Another thing I have to say is that the opening CG cutscenes in this game are really, really impressive. They're very well done, and they look amazing and great. But again, at the same token, that's like less than almost 1% of the game. The rest of it are going to play in the game engine, and the whole thing is just not, great. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but this is the first game that introduces Accord, and Accord is, taking care essentially of the meta universe, basically. And it's interesting because we do have references to Accord in future games, including Nier Automata. And now she is kind of like this, I'm not sure what literary device you would call it, but she now is this common thread that is running through all of Taro's games now. And it's funny how she won't even appear in some things, but she'll just appear in text that she was here at this place. And I think it's a really cool way to kind of thread together your multiverse through this one character. I guess on the sisters themselves, I'm just gonna say it. I think 5 is my favorite. I'm just oh my god, they just got every messed up personality correct in this game. And it's so interesting because I think a lot of people will get into this series because, or especially this game, because of the characters, because they are so distinct. So besides ending A, there are also the other routes. There's Route B. Route C is and Route D, and each one is very interesting and different from the last. This is the one of the first game where, sorry, not the first game, but you have the 4 main endings and then the ending E, which is the final ending. Again, and they swap up exactly what happens in the other endings. So, for example, in one of the pathways, you're basically going in reverse order. So you start with Sister 1, and the final boss is, Sister 5. And so she basically has this ability to summon down her angel and transform into this other aspect of herself. And then you have to fight that thing. And then again, with each expansion, oh, they have angels now. Oh, wait, they can, summon this weird thing to come down and help them. And you start piecing together what exactly is going on just from the mechanics of the lore and the fact that they're doing different things. There's another one where Zero and everyone just freaking dies. I think that's Route C, where it's just really depressing, where everyone just gets murdered, brutalized, not even by themselves, but by other things. And by the end of it, even Mikhail dies in that friggin' timeline. It's awful. It's terrible. I thought ending A was bad and not good, but no, the ending to ending C is whoa, it's tragic. And it's actually great because they really do acknowledge that, in the sense that they use a different version of Growing Wings for Drakengard 1 for ending B, actually, where you basically destroy the world. And they use it for that ending, and I think that was really appropriate, really, really good, and really effed up, frankly, because it was just so, so cool. Again, the designs of the ogres, the minions, the knights, they're all very good. I really like them. They're definitely traditional kind of fantasy things, but styled in a very cool and interesting way that makes them a lot more aesthetically pleasing, I guess. And of course, Zero's aesthetic is great. I mean, the aesthetics in this game are all very good. If anything, super, super annoying. There is a kind of horde mode, or little tournament mode, where you can earn extra money to buy items, or a challenge mode rather. And in that mode itself, you basically kind of landed on one strategy. At least I did. I basically used I think either the Dragoon Spear or I think 5 Spear, and you basically just charge all the enemies. You just find one basic exploit because the game is kind of broken in itself anyway, so you don't feel bad about cheating at it. Again, the biggest thing with this game is it just takes a long time to beat, and it's kind of a slog. And again, if you have not played Drakengard, I don't think you're going to fully appreciate this game, because it's taking all the mechanics and the lore and the universe and how it works, and it's basically explaining it and really building on it in this game in just a completely fascinating way, and which made me have to play it twice anyway. Yeah. Zero also uses a variety of different items. She uses swords, gauntlets, spears, and axes and heavy weapons like that, I believe. And she has basically her super mode, where she gets covered in blood and uses that blood to sing and create energy around her. And yeah, it's all the very basic gameplay thing, and it really does not get any different. That's the main issue. It does not really adapt or get different. Yes, you'll have your party members following you, and you can do different stuff with that, but for the most part, it's very passable, barely passable. But again, that's fine for getting the story across. And again, there are just some runs that just don't feel right. They just don't feel as impactful and as interesting as, the other endings. Also, I would say on that, besides 2 endings to this game, they are not nearly as interesting and as impactful as the original Drakengard ending. Some of them are almost, just kind of like whatever joke endings and things like that. So yeah, ending B is kind of a bit kind of lame, frankly. Zero kind of, sacrifices herself to save Mikhail. And, that's kind of the overarching relationship that we get to near the end of the actual game. Where essentially, we look at Mikhail and Zero and how their relationship has grown, and he's grown to full power and evolved, and it's very similar to Angelus and Legna in the previous games, which is I've always found very interesting, that not only as your relationship build, but also the powers of the dragon also build, which I think is really, really cool. Also, really quick, obviously, a really big component of this game is the music. This is when Okabe, was doing music for Nier, and he did music for Drakengard 3, and there are also some amazingly beautiful tracks in here. Not quite as good as Nier, I would say, but still very good stuff. Also, Zero's main theme is The Silence Is Mine, and you kind of understand that thematically why that fits in so well by the end of the game, which I'm going to talk about now. So, there's not really much to say except the final ending to this game is ending D, and oh my god, it is the hardest thing I have ever done in a video game, period. To the point where I thought I was going to actually go insane. I really recommend you don't actually do the final part of this game, because it is just ridiculously, stupidly unfair and difficult. But yeah, it took me a week straight just to beat this one section, and I'm just completely aghast at that. And what it is similar to the original Drakengard. Out of nowhere, suddenly, after doing a hack and slash Dynasty Warriors type game for 40-50 hours, you suddenly are confronted with doing a rhythm minigame. And this one is way worse than Drakengard 1. Mainly because there's some issue with, the timing of the frames. I felt like in Drakengard 1, as long as you hit it, as you saw the rings coming towards you, you could click them in the right order. You only had 2 of them. And here you only actually have 1 ring, only one type of ring. It's not black and white, it's just white. But to compensate, the issue is that you have to hit it on the beat. So as it's not just actually looking at the rings that are coming towards you, it's listening to the rings that are coming toward you, because you have to hit the rings in exactly the right beat. And I am terrible at rhythm games, so for me this was really an almost impossible trial that I really considered and asked myself, do I actually want to do this? Do I really want to try to actually beat this game, or just watch the ending on YouTube? Because I already put in so many hours into it, and I thought I'm going to go for it. And that was a very interesting experience, to say the least. But yeah, it is a full-on rhythm game where you need to basically hit every single ring, and there are times when you'll be having, it's not just 1 2 1 2, but 1 1 1 1 1 2 2 2 2 2 1 1 1 1 1 2 2 2 2 2, and then on top of that, there are sections where the camera shifts and jitters and goes off screen intentionally, so you can't even see the rings. And the most infuriating part is the very end of the song. You have the screen literally goes black, and using only your ears, you have to hit 2 of the last notes. And I remember I got to the second last one and I failed, but the next time I got there, I was able to get both. And even when I got the final note of that song, I was in literal disbelief. I was literally shocked. I thought, no, it can't. I didn't actually get it, did I? because the thing is just so it's so ridiculous. It's so impossibly ridiculous. I don't know why it's even in the game. I don't know how anyone has beaten it. And funnily enough, I looked at trophy comparisons. I think the amount of people who have gotten it in Drakengard 3 have been like 5%. And I found that funny because in the original Nier, the people who got all the different endings for Nier Gestalt is like 3%, which is even lower than that, which I find very hard to believe, frankly. But to that point, I didn't even realize that replaying Nier a second or third time was actually going to yield a different ending. I was actually very surprised when there was actually extra content. It was not obvious to me, and it was obvious in Automata, but yeah. But yeah, the final mission for Ending D is just something that I am never, ever, ever going to do again. But I've put in my time, and I know that struggle. I know how painful and how brutal it is, and it's something I guess I wish no other person to really go through. I wish there was one guy who had to do it, and that was it. But it's really one of those old school things. You need to ask your friend to come over and try it for you, and it's just, yeah, it's ridiculous. All that being said, was it worth it? Well, the resulting cutscene was kind of lame and cheesy, frankly. I don't think it was actually worth it, but it was worth it to kind of, as an homage to this broken-ass game, to kind of, give it the respect of this amazing story. I think it was worth it for the whole game in itself. And I'm kind of understanding the branching path into Nier and how, we start from this game into Drakengard and then into Nier and seeing the full length and pull of the whole project. But anyway, how do I feel about Drakengard 3? It's really great for its lore and its story, I guess, but everything else about it is really rough around the edges. I hope one day they also remake this game along with the other Drakengard games. I think that would be a great, thing to do, because honestly, like, they really frankly need it. And yeah, I don't know. It's something that I feel like you're going to play if you're a real fan of the series, but it's so esoteric, and Drakengard is esoteric in general that you're pretty much supposed to play this anyway. That all being said, I really do like this game because it is so mysterious and weird and crazy. And even though I'm not super tight on Zero as a character, I like all the other things in this game and everything else it kind of brings to the table. And I think it's in general just a very creative, interesting, cool project. And the last project this studio had before they shut down, if I recall correctly. So this is the game. I think the only way to wrap this up is this is a game I really do adore. Not as much as the original Drakengard, because the original Drakengard was just, it was so good. It actually hit on really intense themes, and this one does too, but the original was more serious. So I like this game, but at the same time, this is a game I would never, ever, ever recommend to anyone because they would absolutely hate it. Unless you're already in Drakengard, there's no reason for you to really pick this up. Anyway, guys, I think that's pretty much all I gotta say on this game. It's a broken, beautiful mess that's, as Yoko Taro said, that weird girl or boy who sat quietly at the back of the class and you like them and you're not really sure why. That is exactly what this game is. It's weird, it's offbeat, it's off kilter, but it has a lot of soul and a lot of spirit, and it has something to say. And with all that being said, guys, I guess I'll see you later. Bye.